Ukrainian military officials have denied Russian reports that Russian troops have captured the village of Dobropillia in the Zaporizhia region. In a statement released on Thursday, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine explained that a Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group had penetrated the outskirts of Dobropillia, but Ukrainian troops had already eliminated it. Video footage of the raid, as well as Ukrainian troops raising their flag in the town, has circulated on social media. Russian propaganda is currently actively spreading fake news that they allegedly control Dobropillia, near Huliapol in the Zaporizhia region. These information attacks by the occupiers are not true, the statement read. The General Staff stated that the Russian servicemen were killed after Russian reconnaissance groups, taking advantage of poor weather conditions, penetrated the town. During counter-sabotage operations on the approach to the village, 3 enemy servicemen were killed, and shortly thereafter, 2 more were neutralized, presumably those tasked with hanging Russian flags in the village they had allegedly captured, the General Staff emphasized. Previously, according to Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief General Alexander Syrsky, Ukrainian units actively blocked attempts by Russian troops to concentrate infantry strike groups in the area of Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad and advance around these villages. Ukrainian intelligence forces have pounded Russia's strategic facilities in occupied Crimea. Ukraine's defense intelligence, known as HUR, has struck a Russian MiG-29 fighter at the Karabakh military airfield in Russian-annexed Crimea. The operation was carried out by the Ghost elite military unit under HUR on December 4. On same night, the Ghost unit also targeted the Irtysh radar complex near temporarily occupied Simferopol, in Crimea. Irtysh 3S is a coastal defense radar operation in the X-band frequency range. Video footage circulated in social media captures the strikes on Russian military targets. In a statement, the Defense Intelligence said that its special units continue to systematically weaken the air defense system of Russians over the temporarily occupied Crimea Peninsula, destroying radars, anti-aircraft systems, and now Russian fighter aviation as well. It should be recalled that on September 21, the Ghost unit for the first time since the start of the war, burned 2 Russian B-12 Cheka amphibious aircraft. Ukrainian intelligence forces have scaled up the frequency and intensity of long-range missile and drone strikes on Russian military positions and strategic facilities in occupied Ukrainian territories as well as deep in Russia.
France continues to explore options for direct involvement in the Ukrainian conflict, according to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. The agency explains that this is in particular the purpose of Government Decree number 2025-1030 of October the 31st, 2025, which authorizes the use of private military companies to provide assistance to a third country in a situation of armed conflict. Even the most casual European observer has no doubt which country is meant. Ukraine's mobile air defense forces and the few F-16s at its disposal are unable to intercept Russian air targets. Mastering the Mirage and other equipment requires time, and high qualifications. This is why Kiev will need foreign private military companies equipped with modern Western, primarily French, weaponry, indicates the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. It is emphasized that Paris should not delude itself into thinking that this is giving itself a free hand, while simultaneously escaping responsibility for the participation of its military in the conflict. The presence of French private military companies in Ukraine, modestly referred to in the aforementioned decree as reference operators for the Ministry of the Armed Forces, will be viewed by Moscow as France's direct participation in military operations against Russia. Consequently, French private military companies will become the primary legitimate target of the Russian armed forces. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service warns. It's worth noting that France has been developing various scenarios for its military's participation in military operations against Moscow for the past several months. Several weeks ago, for example, reports emerged that Paris was preparing to deploy French Foreign Legion fighters to Kyiv-controlled territory. According to Russian media, it was noted that they would infiltrate Ukraine in small groups to avoid Russian strikes. It should be added that the Ukrainian army is currently experiencing a severe shortage of personnel, so the deployment of foreign military contingents in any capacity is essential for Kyiv. Russian media says supporting Ukraine has been a priority, but preventing escalation outside of Ukraine has often been a greater one, sometimes to the frustration of Ukrainian leaders who have at times felt that Western governments were too timid in supporting actions like long-range strikes into Russian territory. In this case, despite demands from Washington to reach a peace deal ending the war in Ukraine, French President Emmanuel Macron insisted that there's still a lot of work to do before any agreement. There isn't a finalized plan on territorial questions. These can only be finalized by President Zelenski, Macron said at a press conference alongside his Ukrainian counterpart. The French president also said talks on frozen assets and security guarantees were still in a preliminary phase. The EU has been stymied in using 140 billion euros in frozen Russian reserves to finance a reparation loan to Ukraine, thanks to resistance from Belgium. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Paris in a show of support as he faces fierce pressure from the administration of US President Donald Trump to make concessions to end the war. He said the peace plan put forward by the US, which originally included territorial concessions and limits on the size of Kiev's army, had improved